Morning, Intrepid Impact listeners. Gary Howard, your host here at ESPN Richmond Radio 106.1. We're at the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show. We sit at the intersection of faith, leadership, and business. And to us, they are as inseparable as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And if you've heard my shows before, most recently especially, you'll know, hey, the Father's the founder of the faith. We know that. We also know that Jesus is the leadership. He's the one that is in charge of executing the Father's plan. If you've read anything in the New Testament, you know that. But then we have business. Business is us. That's us. We're the business. It's all of us interacting. It's the free market society. It's the free market exchange. This is business talk radio, so we're going to talk about the free market. It is an important thing. It's important because not always can others decide our future. We have to discover that. And today we're going to talk about a thing called the Peace Index. And in there lies your future. I guarantee it. So stay tuned. But let's conclude with the business. If you've heard me before, you know that I believe that Adam Smith was a great economist. He wrote a paper in 1775 called The Wealth of Nations. And I don't think it's an accident that I was also a Marine, and the Marine Corps was founded in 1775 as well. So all things to me zero in on 1775. Now, of course, the nation was founded in 1776. But the point is, The Wealth of Nations is a paper, and in there it describes what we call the invisible hand principle. I love this principle. I first got exposed to it in business school years ago. But the business principle is that there's an invisible hand that guides the free market economy. And the invisible hand basically is, hey, we know that even if you're the greediest dude that ever walked across the face of the earth, you are probably going to do something good for your neighbor because it's going to help you. That's the invisible hand. Well, sounds like the Holy Spirit to me. Sounds like the spirit that binds us all together as humans. Now, if you're not a Christian, right, that is okay. That is okay. I'm not judging you. Nobody's judging you. I would encourage you to explore that faith. But if you aren't, that's okay. There's still an invisible hand principle. Why? Because you are guided by your spirit. And your spirit is your vision, it's your purpose, it's your passion, and it could be your profit. It could be your profit. So when we think about the invisible hand principle, we want to think about how all of us work together. When we think about business, that's all of us working together. Whether you're an employee, whether you're the CEO, whether you're middle management, whether you're a solopreneur, or whether you just got a great idea and you were sitting there listening to this in your garage. Now, if you just tuned in, we're at ESPN Richmond Radio 106.1. This is the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show, and we talk about all things leadership, all things faith, all things business, and how they intersect. And we just wrapped up Father, Son, Holy Spirit, faith, leadership, and business. And I want to dive right in today to a brand new, it's not brand new to our show. I talked about the Peace Index quite some time ago, but I'm circling back around to it because it is absolutely foundational to almost everything you can do, not only in your faith, but in your business and in your leadership. The Peace Index is the foundation to leading yourself, to knowing yourself, to lead yourself. The Peace Index represents numbers that represent how you feel. Now, this is a quantitative measurement based on qualitative information. I'll say it again, quantitative measurement. Quantitative, that means data, that means specifics, that means data points. So for all my guardians and nurturers and even my creatives out there and my pioneers, my connectors, we just finished the 5 voices. I want you guys to understand the Peace Index is quantitative that measures the qualitative. The qualitative. So if you're into that, spreadsheets and accounting and data, this is for you. If you're into how people feel and my emotions, and I get all excited about things and I get all sad and mopey, this is for you. The Peace Index represents a number that is floating above your head right now. And if you are driving, do not look up. Please keep your eyes on the road. But the number floating above your head, That is your peace index, and it changes every day. It changes every minute. It changes when people enter into your sphere of influence. And your number affects those around you. So first thing you got to understand is, what's my peace index? Now, y'all know that I'm Jerry Howard. I'm the business coach. I'm the consultant. I got a couple businesses. I'm doing this radio show. Yay, look at me. But y'all also know that I am all about shattering the glaring image. And I can tell you right now, my peace index is not 100. That would be a great goal. But I think when I cross over into my job in eternity, we call that heaven, my peace index will be 100. So your goal is 100. You should be in the pursuit of 100, but it is quite okay if it's not 100. Now, how do we get this number? There's 5 components to the peace index. There's purpose, and they all start with P. Isn't that cool? There's purpose. That's how you feel about what you are designed to do, about why you're here on earth, what you're supposed to be doing with your life. If you feel like you're right in your purpose, it's going to be a high number, right? So my purpose, I just took the assessment, by the way. There's assessment online. I'm going to refer you to soon. But I just took the assessment last night. My purpose, 92. I know that I'm supposed to be talking to you about faith, leadership, and business. That is why I was created. I've always been excited about business, been excited about faith for about the last 12 years. And then leadership has been my thing. Even when I didn't know how to lead myself, I just inherently knew how to lead others. Now, if you want to be a good leader, an intentional leader, and not accidental, like all those accidental things we talked about in the 5 voices, then you got to know yourself to lead yourself. So I wouldn't say I've been a quality leader worth following until after I gave my life to the Lord and started my journey of faith. So purpose, definitely top line there. For me, purpose is important. The way I'm wired, I am really high on higher calling. What are you supposed to be doing with my life? The big picture, very future oriented. So purpose is a big part with me, and I'm so glad that that's high. My purpose on the assessment was a 92, folks, out of 100. Come on. Next is people. People's high too. You guys know I'm a people person. I talked about the 5 voices. I actually had a chance to meet the founders of the 5 voices, or the original author of the 5 voices, Steve Cochran. He's going to be on our show soon, so keep an eye out for that. But I found out that my first voice is actually creative. Go figure. Second is connector. Third is pioneer. Fourth is nurturer. And then last is guardian. Now, when it comes to people, that's important to me. Connector speaks to that. Whether it's first or second, connector is going to be excited about people. Now, the difference between me and a pure connector, as I would say, is that I don't need to know a gazillion people. I need to know 5 people, or 10, or 20, or however many would be a kind of a lower number. A pure connector just wants to know personally 50,000 people. I've never been like that. But what I want to point out here is that we're always on the mission of self-discovery. You never graduate from the school of self-improvement. Steve Cochran, I think, said that. I know he said that to me. I'm not sure if he coined the phrase, but people is so important. My people was actually a little lower than I thought. And I questioned that. I'm like, man, I just came out of this conference. I'm excited about all the people, but the conference people I'm excited about, but I don't live near them. Right. So I'm thinking about my sphere of influence here. Well, maybe some of the people in my life are stressing me out. I'm not going to go into the details of who they are, but they are definitely stressors in our lives. And it's important to know that. My people was around a 65 or a 70, I believe. Point is, if you've got toxic people in your life that are dragging your people index down, start to work yourself out of that, right? In fact, one of the things that God talks about in the New Testament is pruning. You can prune your life, folks. Now, if you're an introvert at heart, you're an introvert, and you don't have that many friends, I would say cultivate some more friends. That might help you in the pruning process, because you don't want to be all alone. But sometimes it's good to be alone. Sometimes it's okay to figure out who you are. There are a lot of people in the world that measure their self-identity by who they are around, or who they're part of. Oh, I'm so-and-so's husband, I'm so-and-so's wife, or I'm spouse, or I'm a business analyst at so-and-so company. True, but again, people is only 1/5 of the peace index. All right. So take a look at how the people around you make you feel. and give it a number, 1 to 100. Next is place. Where are you at in the world? My place was actually way lower than I thought too. And I know why. I know why that is. I live in a very suburbia USA type of neighborhood. Nothing wrong with that. When my kids were little, like tiny little running around, toddlers all the way up to say 10, I could see them in 10 backyards. It was great, right? And I was a stay-at-home dad for a couple of years too. So I know the value of having those playmates close by. But ultimately, I want to be near water, not the ocean. One of these days, I'm going to tell you all about my Myrtle Beach, my most recent Myrtle Beach visit. Man, I don't like jellyfish and I don't like stingrays. And they got tons of them. Don't particularly care for sand. The waves are fun as long as I'm on a flotation device of some kind, but I love lakes. I love jet skis. I love motorcycles. I love mountains. I love snowboarding. So it sounds like I need a mountain house with a mountain lake, y'all. So that's different than suburbia USA. So it doesn't surprise me place was a little lower. Next is personal health. My personal look, y'all. Before I joined the Marine Corps, I boxed for a little while, and I boxed at around a 195 weight, but I'm only 5'11". That still would appear to be overweight, but I looked like a boxer. I've just been a dense boned type of kid. Good thing, because I broke plenty of bones growing up. But that's the point. My physical health has not been that great. In fact, I'm about 40 pounds heavier than I was when I was actually on active duty in the Marine Corps. So that's kind of my measurement. Now I know as a 40 something, I'm not going to be in the top physical health that I was when I was 23, but I'd love to be a lot closer. All right. So that one was a little bit low too. I think that was in the 60s. So you can see how these different metrics kind of give you an indication as to where you are. And then the last one is provision. Provision was a little bit low. So I don't know if I told you all this, but we had to shut down one of our companies. We own 2 construction companies. One of them we had to shut down. It was a COVID casualty. So it does not surprise me that provision is low, because if you don't know, businesses are designed to produce income, and we call that net income at the bottom of the balance sheet. And when that production doesn't occur anymore, doesn't matter if you're a salary or if you pay yourself a commission or however you pay yourself from your company, when that company no longer exists, you don't get that provision. So we put a lot of work into that. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not unlike a ton of other Americans, which is another thing I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be a COVID casualty, but I am, or one of our businesses was. Thankfully, we have some other things going on. Of course, consulting is my main thing. We also own another company that does construction. My wife has a job. I mean, we are certainly not destitute, but my provision is not where it was. So that's going to be a little bit low right now. And so you can see how throughout your life and throughout the different times that you do things, your peace index is going to change. It's going to fluctuate. When we get through shutting down that company and we get everything established, and that is going to be, not only is a great source of wisdom. I know all kinds of things people don't know in business and never led a team through a shutdown. We had 10 employees in that company. So we had to help them find other places, all the money that goes along with that. But it all worked out. It all worked out. The point is that lowered my provision. So now we've got 5 numbers. We got purpose was in the 90s, people was in the 60s, place was in the 60s, personal health was in the 60s, provision was in the 60s. So you can see the average of that is going to be somewhere in the 70s, probably low 70s. So my average is where my peace index is. So the number on the top of my head right now is going to be about 71 or 72. Now, if you are somebody who I don't get along with, you come in the room, all of a sudden people's going to drop. So that peace index is going to drop. So I'm going to be a little bit, edgier probably around that person. Now, if somebody who I'm really excited about comes around, people's going to jump. So you can see how this number, this singular number called your peace index, is floating above your head all day long. Well, I'm excited to say that my friend Jeremy Kubicek, he is the founder of Giant, co-founder, him and Steve Cochran co-founded Giant a number of years ago. He just finished a book called The Peace Index. And folks, we're going to be talking about the Peace Index for a hot minute, because that book is launching next month. I'm going to have copies, lots of copies. He's going to be selling copies. A lot of us around the country are going to be talking about the Peace Index. So I'm going to be talking about it on our show, because it is so vital to everything we do. When you think about it, when you walk out when you walk out of your bedroom and your peace index is low, your family can sense that. It's so important to understand how to create a peace index, a number above your head that is not only accurate, but that can improve. And see, here's what we want to do. We want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. So the thermometer, of course, if you don't know, responds to the environment around it. The thermostat creates the temperature of the environment. So you can use your high peace index, if you really work on this, you can use your high peace index to become a thermostat for the room and raise the tide. Remember, rising tide raises all ships. Well, you can do that by understanding your peace index, your purpose, your people, your place, your personal health, your provision. How does all that tie in to who you are? And when you walk out that front door, when you drive to work, when you get out of your car, especially if you're in leadership, especially if in your faith. One of the things I love to do is help leaders in ministry understand this, because if you are running a church, which is supposed to be bringing life and joy and energy to people, and you are a toxic leader or you have a toxic staff, nothing's going to empty the pews faster than that. Nothing's going to empty the pews faster than toxic leadership. So the peace index is literally the foundation to understanding how to be intentional about how you impact others and how you lead yourself. Now, folks, if you're just tuning in, I want to remind everyone we're here at ESPN Richmond Radio 106.1, the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show. We are talking about all things faith, leadership, and business, and we love to be right at the intersection of all that. So look, if you're not a Christian, that's cool. I love you regardless. Peace index is the key, because look, every faith, every religion out there has some level of a peace index. So I love the Giant tools. I love Giant Worldwide. I know the whole HQ team. But what I love most is the impact that we can have on the entire world. And I'm a huge fan of not only teaching my clients this, but also teaching them to teach their leaders, right? I love to influence the influencers. And I'm telling you, it's not an ego thing, folks. It is a thing where my mission in life, my purpose, is to restore trust and leadership. If you've been on our website, you'll see it's intrepid-impact.com. Restore trust and leadership. We believe that the foundation to that is value in every voice. So we always start with the 5 leadership voices, which you guys know I spent a number of weeks on. And then we move into these giant tools. One foundational tool, or power tool, as we like to say, is the peace index. The peace index, folks, is that number that's floating above your head. Now, my family knows when I come in the front door, and actually I enter through the side, but when I come in and I'm kind of like, you got that brightness in your eyes, you're kind of smiling a little bit, my peace index is high. They can sense it. When you come in the office in the morning and your team sees that you got your coffee and you're kind of heading straight to your office or your desk or whatever, your peace index is low. They can sense it. It is your job as an intentional leader to lead yourself, to know yourself, to lead yourself. We talked about that tool in the past too. It's another power tool. It's great. But if you don't know your peace index, then you won't really know how you're impacting those around you. And that's the clue here, folks, is the peace index is how you determine how you feel about the 5 areas that are really the key drivers in your life, while simultaneously understanding that you can be a thermostat and raise the peace index of others by being intentional. And if I know that provision is low for me, and my kids want me to buy them some expensive thing, then I know provision's already low. And it's not just about saying no. I've never had a problem with that. It's about saying no in a kind way. Because why? I already know my provision's low. I know that's going to affect my reaction, my response. You don't have to be a slave to these tendencies. That's the whole point. So my reaction to that, my response to something that would deplete the provision even further when the provision's already low, can be this. I'm sorry, honey. I'm choosing not to spend my money on that right now. Let me say that again for you. This is key. I'm sorry, honey. I'm choosing not to spend my money on that right now. We have other things that I'd like to spend my money on that I think are really key and really important. So knowing my provision is low is a thing that can help me make intentional responses to the world, whether it's your boss asking you a question, in my case, your daughter asking you a question. Same thing with purpose. If you're going into a job every day and you are not, first of all, not aware of what your purpose is, but not aware of how your purpose, how you're fulfilling that call on your life, then obviously you're not going to be quite as motivated. You're not going to be bringing your true giftings, which the five voices exemplifies all of where those giftings might be. But you got to understand your purpose. If your purpose is low, I believe that a lot of people are highly motivated by their purpose. So if it's low, it's going to be the thing that's affecting you. It's going to be the thing that makes your work, perhaps your work is mediocre. Now, I don't like hanging out in mediocrity. It drives me crazy, but I have been there. When I was a Marine, I was a good paper Marine. And I don't mind saying that. I had my ducks in a row on paper. It all looked good. Going to college, went to night school, showed up, this, that, and the other. But my purpose was low. You know, when I signed up for the Marines, I thought I was going to go off, do this, do that. And I was going to be an officer and all these other goals that I didn't do. But I didn't. I was in a non-deployable unit. And I'm glad I had a family in night school to kind of be my anchor. But that affected my purpose. So my work level was lower. I didn't give it my all, I don't think. Same thing with people. If you're around toxic people, your people is going to be low. If your people is 10, that of course affects the other 5 areas significantly. And then again, place. Before you move to Colorado Springs, where apparently there's no humidity and not a lot of bugs. Yeah, the Marine doesn't really like bugs, go figure. But before you move there, why don't you visit, right? So if you don't like your place, go visit the place you think you might like, because you might find that your place is much better than that place you've been looking at. So I'm not talking about the grass is always greener here. I'm talking about let's explore what it would look like to change our place. For the time being, you can still move anywhere you want in America. It's not like that everywhere in the world. So you actually have more control over your place than most people in the world. So give it a shot, take a vacation there, or just drive there, go check it out. Maybe find somewhere that's local that seems kind of like where you'd like to live and see if you like it. Right? Same thing with provision. What would it be like to have, what if you had $1 million? What would you do with it? What would you do with it? I don't know that I need $1 million per se, as far as annual income. I probably only need, if I really wanted to go baller, I could live off half of that. But that's the point, is I can give away $500,000 a year and still live great. Probably give away a lot more. And then personal health. What's the next logical step to put your personal health where you need it to be? All right. So maybe it's here's one for me. I kind of like to stay up late. Going to bed early prevents me from wanting to eat snacks late. So going to bed early is how I can affect my personal health, both with sleep and not eating those snacks late. So every one of these areas gives you some clue as to A, what's that number that's floating over your head, called your peace index, but also how you can change it. Because if I continue to lose the 40 pounds overweight that I am since I was on active duty, then I'm obviously my personal health is going to go up. And when I reach that amount, that number, that magic number that I have in my head that I think is so perfect, then I will know that I am improving my personal health. And of course, that number goes up and affects the overall peace index. Think about it. All of us have lost weight before, and we run around and we're so excited and it's been great. Imagine how that affects other people when you're that energetic. And then, of course, they compliment you, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this ties into your peace index. The peace index is definitely going to be a topic for discussion for the next few months. Like I said, Jeremy Kubicek, his book is launching. You can find it on thepeaceindex.com is the website, as well as the assessment. I'm also going to have the assessment soon on my own website, so you can check out intrepid-impact.com. And as far as Christian communicating go, you guys know where my faith is in the Lord. If you have need of that, check out jerryhowardspeaks.com. So we've got 3 websites, thepeaceindex.com, intrepid-impact.com, and jerryhowardspeaks.com. You can find me at pretty much all of those. Again, Intrepid Impact Leadership Broadcast. We're here at ESPN Richmond Radio 106.1. It has been a great time with y'all today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Did it stop?